Hi, everyone. I'm April Callis-Birchmeier, Certified Change Management Professional and Project Management Professional. And today I'm excited to talk about where to start with change. So that seems like a little bit of a weird topic, where to start, because sometimes as, project professionals or as change professionals, we're not really, just starting with nothing, right? Like we are brought into a project or assigned to a project, or somebody requests us to come and just join and listen in and help with something. And yet, and so sometimes I'm a little bit in a funny spot, and I'm sure that you've had this situation too. I'm in a funny spot where the project may already be well underway, and I'm just coming in now at the middle to end when the leadership maybe has a concern, thinks that something's not going well. I don't always get the opportunity to start right at the beginning. And when I do start right at the beginning, it's very exciting for me because I have a clean slate and I can have a place to start from. So I want to talk a little bit about that. Like, what do you do in the beginning steps of a change management effort? What do you do right away? And I think that this is a great topic to think about because not only is it somewhat uncommon, we don't always run into this situation, but also when you do, knowing what you should be doing when is so helpful. And that's one of the reasons that I really love having the Standard for Change Management from the Association of Change Management Professionals as a tool, and also having my Ready framework from Ready, Set, Change as a tool. Because with these two tools, I know where to begin. And I always begin by defining the change. So this is really an important piece, to define the change. And sometimes, even when you come in later, maybe halfway through or later on a change initiative, sometimes they haven't truly defined the change. So we're going to talk a little bit about how do we do that, and exactly what do we do at the beginning of a change, that we're just starting, and then we'll move into talking about all of the 5 processes that we look at for change management efforts. And we'll have a few questions to talk about. So hopefully that sounds good to you, because that's what we want to talk about tonight. So I'm excited to be here because I think it's really important to define the change and why it has to occur. So in our Standard for Change Management, the first process group in the standard is 5.1, evaluate change impact and organizational readiness. So it's talking about two pieces, right? We're going to evaluate change readiness. How ready is the organization? A change impact. How will this impact the organization? And then how ready are they for that impact? So we're kind of looking at two pieces. We're going to evaluate the impact. We're going to look at how ready. So to evaluate the impact, we have to know what the change is. And that's where define the change comes in. And we look at, what is this change for stakeholders? What is this change for the organization? And why does it have to occur? And sometimes we call that the change rationale, why it has to happen. If we don't have a compelling reason for why something needs to happen, I think it's important to step back and say, does it need to happen? I mean, if we don't have a why are we doing it? It reminds me a little bit of thinking about, um, any endeavor that we're about to undertake. If we don't know the why we want to do it, I don't think we have a whole lot of momentum. Uh, First thing that comes to my mind is you know signing up for a health program of some sort. If we don't have a why, we're definitely not going to follow it. Um, your why could be something, the change rationale could be something like you want to lower your cholesterol, you want to improve your overall general health. Maybe you want to incorporate more exercise and feel more fit. Maybe you want to lose weight. Maybe you want to build muscle. Maybe you want to really expand your flexibility. Whatever the why is for you, it's really important that we're going to define what that change will be, that I'm going to exercise, and I want to define the rationale. The why is because I want to become healthy and lower my cholesterol and lower my resting heart rate and all of my other vital signs. So that is my rationale. When I have this rationale, it can make it so much simpler for me to describe to other people the why of the change. You know, if we said, I'm going to start exercising on a daily basis, and someone said, why? You might say, well, why not? But that's not really an answer. But saying I want to increase my or improve my health, I want to increase my endurance, I would like to increase my flexibility and my strength. Those are all reasons. Then we want to think about that vision of the future state. You know, how will we know when we get there? How will we know we've achieved what we want? Maybe we're able to run a race that we couldn't run before. Maybe we're able to lift a certain level of weight, or maybe we want to fit in a certain dress. That's what I have on my list. I have a number of things I wish I could, wear on a more regular basis. So that would be a vision of the future state for me. Like if I lost a couple of pounds and got a little more fit, I would probably fit into the outfit that I'm thinking of. So that's the next piece after we've thought of that rationale. You know, the rationale sometimes is a little bit more, I'd have to say measurable perhaps, but the vision is something that grabs your imagination. The vision is what we're after because the vision can get people moving excitedly. So when I think about the relevant and relatable story of change, which is what I talk about with the READY framework, the R is that story, that vision. How do we get people excited and have some momentum around how to move forward on this change? You know, the rationale just isn't as exciting as the vision, honestly. The vision is the picture of, buying a new home and throwing a party. That's the vision. You know, buying a new home because you need more space and you think that it would be very helpful to your family. That's rationale. So hopefully that's clear and is helpful in thinking about the importance of the difference between the two, the rationale and the vision. After we've got defined what our change is going to be, and we've thought about that rationale, and then we have that vision or that image, that's how we develop the story. And stories don't have to be huge. Stories can be small examples. Stories about change are very well done with small, quiet examples. One of the examples that I've used very effectively over the years is that story that you may have heard at some point in time about taking my children shopping to do errands and having to run to multiple stores and how difficult it was to get the two girls in and out of their car seats to go in and out of these different stores. That was really a tough time, honestly, because I felt like I just was worn out by taking them in and out of those car seats, in and out of those stores to get all the chores done. And then I discovered that I could take them one place to Walmart and get everything that we needed in that one place and get back in the car and go home. And when I discovered the difference between these two pieces, I was able to use that small example as a story to really influence potential change agents and those who are going to be involved in the change as stakeholders. So we don't always have to have a huge story. It doesn't have to be a giant movie scenario or anything, not Citizen Kane. What we're looking for is just a small example of how something would be different that we can relate to that change that we're talking about. So let's think a little bit about these 5 process groups of change. So we have the first process group, as I said, is evaluate change impact and organizational readiness. And that's all about evaluating what's going to happen, assessing where the organization is. We're thinking about, determining where those stakeholders are and how they are going to be impacted, how they will be involved in the change, how they feel about the change. When I do my stakeholder assessment, I'm looking at my gain, my loss, my fear. We want to understand how they're going to be affected by this change. And then we want to assess where change leaders are, right? Who that sponsor is, how these change leaders are planning to be involved. And we want to also look at the organization's culture and capacity to adopt change. Sometimes we look at the organizational capacity to adapt change, and we might say, this organization looks as though it's ready to adapt a change. But what we may not be noticing is how much change is happening in the organization. And so that's where we want to take time to really assess what other changes are going on. I was meeting with a client today, and they were telling me about a couple of large change initiatives. And then they added on like 6 other small change initiatives, leading to about 8 huge, impactful, stakeholder impactful change initiatives. And I did ask about it. I said, well, is there anything else? And they said, well, just the day-to-day whirlwind of operations. So I felt like that was actually 9 large challenges to be juggling all at the same time. Not that they can't, but they have to be really mindful and somewhat careful in thinking about how to start and how to maintain all of those change initiatives, because I don't think people can focus on that many pieces at one time. We have to let something be the lead, and then when that one is achieved, maybe another change initiative starts to lead. I think also thinking about the capacity for change leads me to think about the readiness for change. If it's an organization that has a lot of change all the time, their change muscles are a little bit better than those who have not had much change. And so they're a little bit readier. They're a little more able to adopt a lot of change and deal with a lot of it at once. As I said, I like looking at that change leadership layer also. I want to think about how committed the leaders are to this change program. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time to discern. Sometimes we have to observe leaders to see how committed they are. And in the training that I provide, we often talk about how to engage our leaders in a way that keeps them active and visible with the change, to keep moving the change forward. And then we also want to think about, what are the risks of this change? What is the obstacle that might really tackle us in this change, or that we may not be able to climb over in this change? Also, what is the likelihood of success for this change? Like when I'm thinking about likelihood of success, I want to know that we have a good likelihood of success. If I see that this change during this evaluation and of impact and how prepared the organization is to be able to adopt change. When I'm thinking about this process group, which in the standard is 5.1, I definitely want to think about the risk and the likelihood of success and the measurement. How will I be able to show that success, to measure that success, and to show the success of the change effort to leadership, to stakeholders, to customers who are also stakeholders, and throughout the entire organization. The second piece that we then go to is our strategy development. So in our standard, this is 5.2, formulate the change strategy. And when we're looking at strategy, we are thinking about what's the best approach? What's the best approach to be able to do the things that have to happen? What's the best approach to be able to communicate with our stakeholders? and with others who are involved in the change, such as leaders and cascading leaders and sponsors. What is the best approach to dealing with um, our sponsor, our leader? Our leaders many times need to have a strategy to help them see what they should be doing in their role, how they can show up in an active and visible way. It's important for our sponsors to be committed to acting in a visible way and in a very focused way. And then I think about strategy related to learning and development. How am I going to ensure that what we know our stakeholders need to learn to be able to adapt the change is actually what's being taught in our training and our development and our support for them. I'm also thinking about, how do I engage stakeholders? How do I capture their imagination? How do I kind of expand the story so that our stakeholders are very interested in this change and don't just get bored or forget it, or even worse, don't know about it at all, which goes back to our communication strategy. I'm also thinking about my measurement and benefit realization strategy. How am I going to tell how things are going along the way? How am I going to measure this? What metrics will I be using? And how am I going to know that we're getting the benefit of the change that we expect to get? All of those pieces are really critical in thinking through the strategy we plan to take for that. Then I think about, our sustainability strategy, which means we have to sustain the change. And that leads me to transformation and transition. So sustainability and transformation strategy, I think, is important, but that transition plan, that transition strategy, if you will, can really help with that. So that's the second piece of, the 5 process groups that we know are in the standard for change. And in the READY framework, we call that engaging leaders, because we're really focusing on how to engage with the leaders to drive this change. For the third process group in the standard for change management is develop the change management plan. We've developed done all the assessments, we've evaluated things, we've looked at everything, and then we create a strategy around it. So the next logical step is to create a plan. And a plan is a timeline and action-driven document that says, here's the actions that we're going to take in the time that we're going to do these things, and here's the result that we're looking for. So the plan, I think, is very tactical. I love combining my strategic thinking and my planning. Sometimes I'll do that in the beginning of a change. I'll kind of pull my strategy and my plan together. But in other cases, I think I have to really lay out the strategy and have acceptance of that from leaders before I can move forward into that planning, into that tactical, more action and timeline driven steps. It's important to think through what our leaders and what our organizations are used to. I try to align myself with whatever they're used to seeing in terms of a strategy or plan, because I want it to be simple for everybody to be able to read what we're planning to do, understand what that is, and then get behind it and endorse it. So the fourth piece then, of course, is executing, right? 5.4, execute the change management plan. And execution, I always think of as a very exciting, fun time, because we finally get to do something. We've been thinking and assessing and looking, observing the organization. We've been kind of building up some strategies and have some plans, and then we get to do it all. And I love to execute. I hope you like executing as well, because I think that is really when you get to see how your ideas, your strategy, and your plans come to life and really are used to make a difference. Once I've finished execution, which is, behind the go live date, usually for the project itself, because our project team is very focused on the technical milestones. And that project team is got milestones that they're all very focused on technology, and they tend to go live uh, on their schedule, and it's prior. They go live at the same time that the stakeholders are having kind of their first taste. So right when they go live, they start to close down their project, but our stakeholders are just starting to really go through that transition of applying that training that we've given them and thinking through all of the pieces uh, of the training to be able to do their jobs differently in the new world. All those execution points, they come after. So there's always a little bit of a behind lag for the change management group when we're dealing with a project plan. And then I think about, uh, our final phase, and our final phase is ensuring that we complete the change management effort. And we complete the change management effort really by doing a couple of things, right? Like looking at the outcomes of our change and measuring our outcomes to our objectives, right? We laid out our objectives in the first 5.1, evaluate the change impact and organizational readiness. Figuring out our objectives is one of those tasks. And then we're looking after we've executed to see how closely did we meet that objective with our outcome. Then I'm also conducting a lessons learned activity so that I have lessons learned information to take forward into the next initiative to kind of wrap into the next change. And then I want to have sign off and approval to release resources and transfer this project, this change initiative to the operational owners of it. And so that's another piece for completing the effort. So these 5 efforts I think are important. But when we think about what's the very first step, I guess I'll ask you, what do you think is the very first step that you can take for successful change? Would it be this definition of the change? Identifying the rationale of the change? Or is there something else that you feel is a really important first step for you? I'll tell you, I like to read the charter. I like to read the project charter before I even define the change. It helps me think through the rationale. And I remember the first time I read a change charter, and I also was looking at the strategic plan of the organization. And the strategic plan had a very tactical reason that our project needed to start and reach a certain milestone by a certain date. And when I read that, I thought, well, why aren't we using this as what Cotter calls the burning platform, right? John Cotter says having a burning platform, a hot issue, some need, some crisis is a great way to drive change. And I really felt that way as well. And I thought, why aren't we using this as the burning platform? But I discovered that even though it had been identified as a hot issue, a burning platform, it had already been addressed by a different change effort. So it was no longer a burning platform. It was sort of a smoldering platform. It was just ashes. And so that was not something that I could leverage. But it was interesting to me that I could see that in the strategic plan, they had identified several ideas, several strategies, several visions of where the organization wanted to go. And those were the burning platforms, if you will. Those were the areas we wanted to move toward. And so then I started to really look at the sequence of those changes and really address in the sequencing, why is it that we're starting with this one? And that's when the rationale came into play. That's when I could start to see the change rationale for the order, the sequencing of the project being rolled out. So when you're thinking about change, looking at the materials that you have, and the standard does identify this as one of the inputs for, as an input for the 5.1 define the change. They call for looking at the business case of the change, for to look at the research, the charter, the strategic plan, and also success measures to identify how to define the change. Like these are external documents in the organization that exist. The charter, the strategic plan, identifying what success is going to look like, how will we measure success, and thinking through kind of that whole business case for the rationale. And then developing that rationale and moving through that vision statement to get people really excited and to really make it a compelling change. So it's important to think through all of those. First, I'd say 5.1 through 5.5 in the standard. It's really important to look at those and understand that that is how we lead from the beginning. Now, when we're coming in at the middle, sometimes I collapse some of those pieces. Sometimes that work is half done. Sometimes it's all the way done. I might have a kind of a vision for the change that's already been communicated to others. And maybe I just want to tweak that a little bit or jump onto that and kind of expand it for all of the stakeholder groups. But I think it's important to recognize that this starting point, whether it's in the middle of a change, near the end of a change, or at the very beginning, we're always going to check these things. We're always going to look for that definition. We want to look for that vision or that rationale and then create that vision, that relevant, relatable story so that we can help people move forward toward that vision. And then we're going to assess other pieces such as what's success going to look like? How will we know when we get there? How are we planning to measure that? So we talk a lot about these 5 process groups, about these 5 ready steps, and I didn't really cover all of the 5 steps today. We talk a lot about that in our training, and I'm so excited. We have a training cohort, the Ready, Set, Change Accelerated Training and Exam Prep cohort that begins on April 22nd. And I would love for you to join our group. We're having a fantastic group this year, and I'm so excited. We are only offering 3 cohorts this year because we have a lot of private companies who are asking us to come talk with their PMO groups and train their PMO teams to be able to lead change more effectively using this Ready framework. So we finished our January cohort, that's completed. We also have our April 22nd cohort, and that will be ending on May 10th. And I think we do have a bonus session on May 17th. And then our third session, our third group is in September. And what I think is really special about our training is the connection that people have to each other after they attend our training. People are kind of connected, it feels like forever, because we have some really great discussions. It's very interactive. And we do quite a bit of online live training in addition to some pre-recorded sessions to make it flexible for your schedule. So if you're interested in our Ready, Set, Change Accelerated Training and Exam Prep, go to our website. It's springboard-consult.com. So www.springboard, springboard-consult.com. And you can look at our training if you're interested in joining us there. But I think that when we consider the whole point of, what do you do to start change? I don't think that you can ever go wrong by understanding the change itself and being able to describe it and define it in a way that makes sense to people. So then we can really describe that rationale, build that vision, build that story, and then help our stakeholders start to understand this vision while we engage with the rest of the organization to assess where things are, where we plan to go, and build our strategies, our plans, execute, and then complete that change effort. So I really enjoyed talking with you about this today. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me, april@springboard-consult.com. You can send me a note. You can go on our website. We have a contact form there. But I'd love to hear from you. And I'd love to hear how you start change. What do you do at the first moment when you're assigned to a change project? What do you do first? How do you begin? Please let me know because I'd love to hear from you. Thank you. Take care, and I'll see you next week.